Welcome to episode 13 of Out of Bounds, the podcast where I give my social commentary on different topics in today's society. I'm your host, Terry, and today we're talking about Captain Marvel, Brie Larson, this whole backlash and this idea of white discrimination. So, to give context to this, this is a mainstream topic that leads to a bigger conversation. What we have now is Captain Marvel, the next MCU movie coming out this week, starring actress Brie Larson. And there is a big backlash going on, and it's twofold. Number one, there's backlash over the idea. I wouldn't say the idea, because I think too many times in these discussions, each side degrades each other and uses derogatory terms, and we never get anywhere. I will say there's not backlash over the idea of having a female lead superhero. I think there's backlash over the perception that it's being forced down our throats as diversity, and it doesn't come off as natural. And so that point I could probably agree with on some level. But number two, this mostly is about Brie Larson's comments. And so Brie Larson, kind of infamously a few years ago made a comment about, A Wrinkle in Time, directed by Ava DuVernay. And so in those comments, she was kind of asked about the negative critic reception. And in her response, she basically said that she doesn't care what old white dudes or what a white dude has to say about movies like A Wrinkle in Time. She wants to hear from critics that are in the demographic for what the movie was made for. And so that was blown out of proportion. So she was just basically saying that a lot of the press junkets that she's around, the interviews and all these different things, they're predominantly white older males, and that she wants to hear more diverse opinions, and that specifically she wants to hear opinions of people in the demographic that the movie was made for. So a very progressive, if you will, social justice, if you will, type of stance. Fine, she has her right to that. But a lot of people took that negatively as in twisting, as people usually do, politicizing things to make it work for their opinion. They twisted her words to say Brie Larson hates white men, or Brie Larson thinks that white men shouldn't be critics, and all this stuff. 100% not what she was saying. So eventually she came out and clarified that she was not talking about, in what she said, taking away seats at the table. She wants to add more seats to the table so we have more voices, similar to a lot of things that we've heard. Now, she goes on as she's doing the Captain Marvel tour, and she's talking about how she pretty much was saying that she wants to have this circuit of people covering the press tour of Captain Marvel to be more diverse, and that she wants it to be inclusive with more diverse people covering the press junkets instead of just white men, and that she won't basically she was saying that if it's up to her, they won't have any press junkets or interviews where it's just only white men. And people twisted that to say that she said she will not be interviewed by white men, or that all these other stuff. So this whole narrative that Brie Larson hates white men started to track. And to the point, like most things, it's the same stuff. People start Facebook groups, they start hashtags, they start an effort to go on Rotten Tomatoes and downvote, IMDb and downvote the movie before they even saw it. All these things that internet trolls like to do. And so there's some people that have very big backlashes to what she had to say. And so that's kind of where we end up, because the movie's coming out this week. Now, here's my thing. As far as how everybody's twisting Brie Larson's words and stuff. I don't condone it. I don't believe anything they say. If you look at the actual transcripts of what she said and not just headlines, you would know what she actually meant in the context of what she was saying. I think the first time we talked about Wrinkle in Time, she could have used some more finesse words, but really it's not her job to do that. I mean, she said how she felt. And you know I'm an advocate for being honest on how you feel. So she could have said some things to make people feel a little better. But the fact is if you do your actual research before being mad, you would know how she actually feels about the topic. So now let's get to the actual topic with discrimination, white discrimination, because we have to be honest about this stuff. And I'll be honest, definitely, it's not something that I philosophize all my life or anything. I'm in the middle of graduate classes. I'm taking law. I'm listening to different opinions. I'll continue to form my opinion. But when you look at it, the letter of the law allows for discrimination through different channels in employment, education, all these different things. Now, you can rephrase it as affirmative action, but the fact is it's discrimination. And I think talking about law and looking at different law, you can definitely see it where the reasoning behind it is to fix or remedy past discrimination. And so that's fine. I think all of us could understand that. Hopefully any of us that's rational, we could understand you saying there's a history of discrimination towards certain groups that have negatively affected them. And so measures will be taken to remedy that. We can understand that. But the fact is that the actions to be taken is just more discrimination. So people try to say, no, it's not discrimination, it's affirmative action, historical context. It doesn't matter. I'm not arguing with you the reasoning behind it, but I'm telling you that you could call it what you want. It is discrimination. So when you say that we're going to have quotas or that we want X% of our population to be African American or X% of our population to be lower class, or we want X% of our population to be Latino, Hispanic. You are then segregated and pointing out a specific group to which they can benefit over another group. That's discrimination. It is what it is. And so people always try to argue back and forth with me. And it's funny, like the human mind can justify anything. And they try to justify it. And again, I'm not even talking about justifying it what it is, but it is what it is. It's discrimination. So there are people, and I don't like to use the term white, but Caucasian Euro-Americans, there's those type of citizens in our country that do feel like they're under attack. And the fact is, while we can point at a lot of historical context, we can point at all these different things, it doesn't mean much to somebody that is not in that position. And I think as humans, we got to realize that you aren't going to affect change by trying to throw stuff at people that they didn't have any control over. Whether they benefit from it now or not, whether they have small privileges or, as I call them, micro privileges, or you have big privileges, they aren't in control of that. And so you say, okay, well, now it's your job to make it right. Or even if you make it right, it's still, you're not one of us. It's not a good way to approach people. And a lot of things with this social justice stuff is how people approach people. And I tell you, it's just as bad on each side. Just to take a moment from the topic, talking about seeing the Captain Marvel stuff online, it's bad on both sides. Sometimes even worse on the quote unquote progressive side. They're trolls just like everybody else. And that's what we got to realize. This is not good versus evil. This is not right versus wrong. It's a lot of gray. more than one thing could be true at a time. And I will tell you, there are people that use the exact same terrible bullying and troll tactics on the progressive side, just as it is on the conservative side. But anyway, when we get down to it, it's discrimination. And people don't want to recognize that. I think I can fully have a conversation, recognize you're right. You're being discriminated against because of your ethnicity. But it's for a reason to remedy past things. There might be alternatives that can be better for it. But the fact is, there is a real effect on people that have been disenfranchised for a long time. And that there needs to be measurements taken to rectify that. And it's going to take radical change. I can agree and understand both of those things at the same time without having to get in a fight over it. But there's a lot of people that just don't know how to do that. And so what we end up is people twisting Brie Larson's comments to make a comment on a larger issue. Brie Larson did not advocate to hate white men, tell white men that they can't review movies or any of those other things. She didn't do any of that. But people are upset in a very real way because they take her comments in the vein of other comments that attack white people. And so, especially men, Caucasian men right now, where some people feel like, okay, you get a group of 10 Caucasian men from different walks of life, and that's not diversity just for the fact that they're Caucasian men. I agree that that's messed up, that there is a level of us versus them mentality there that people are being blind to. Now, I would never agree that that's not diversity, and people have reduced diversity to race. And now they're starting to roll it into gender and sexuality. But the fact of the matter is diversity can come in all shapes and forms in very different ways. And so if you put 10 Caucasian men in a room as far as critics, there's still diversity there. Now, is it as much diversity and representation as putting a number of people in there? No. So that's, I think, what the other side has to realize is that the conversation isn't that as a Caucasian person, as a Caucasian male, as a straight, heterosexual, cisgendered, all that Caucasian male, your opinion doesn't matter. That's not what's being said. At least not on the whole. What's being said is that there needs to be a diversity of opinions. Now, the thing is, the other thing people got to realize is, look, if you put people of 10 different ethnicities in the room, but they all lived on the same block their life, they all went to the same schools, all had the same socioeconomical backgrounds, they're going to be diverse, but how diverse are they going to be from a room of 10 Caucasian males from all different parts of the world, different economic or socioeconomic status and everything else? Probably not as diverse. And so the problem is that, again, with the us versus them mentality, people create this male, Caucasian, cisgendered, heterosexual. That's the norm. So the norm is bad. Anything that's not the norm must be good. And so, okay, you're black. It must be good. Okay, you're LGBTQ. Must be good. Okay, you're Latino. Must be good. Okay, you're from a lower class. Must be good. And that's not the truth. Just because you're diverse from the normal standard of white male doesn't mean that you're automatically better or that you're right or that you're even different. And so a lot of things come together to make diversity. And I do think just in general, by putting different people in the room, you're going to have better perspectives. And so having a industry of critics and whatnot that tends to be older Caucasian males, no, I don't think that is productive. But saying that you should add more people to the room, to the junkets, to the press tours, to the critics reviews, I don't think that's a negative at all, especially when you're not talking about taking away people that are already there. But at the same time, you do got to realize there are people that want that. And so you're talking about neo-Marxism and neoliberalism and all these different things where there are extremists. And some people got to realize that there are extremists. I feel like most people are just talking about some more equity. They're talking about adding more people to the table. They're talking about having equal opportunities for people. Same thing that Larson is talking about. But there are extremists that are talking about radically ripping away everything from anybody that is Caucasian, Euro-American, especially male, and then reversing the power. So there are those people out there. Just like the people at UC Berkeley that decided conservative ideas were dangerous enough that they could physically harm people. There are those extremists out there. There are the extremist conservatives that aren't really upset at Brie Larson's comments. They're upset at the very idea that a woman should be in her place and not lead in a superhero movie, and that we should not have children seeing that because a woman should not be in that place. They're extremists on both sides. And everyday people interact with these extremists, whether through content on the internet or some people in everyday life. And so they have legitimate fears, but then they extrapolate those fears and put them on people that they interact with in every day into this us versus them mentality. Oh, you don't like Brie Larson's comments? Oh, you must be this type of backwoods, misogynist, yada, yada, yada. Oh, you like Brie Larson's comments? You must be this radical, liberal, take everything from the white man. The white man shouldn't have anything, yada, yada, yada. And so there's a lot of gray in between. Life isn't black and white, as I always say. It's not a us versus them. But I think we could at least get somewhere. Number one, not just reading headlines, actually read what's going on. But number two, we have to understand as people not in the majority that some of the things we're proposing is discrimination. Some of the things and the way we look at things is just because a person is of Caucasian Euro-American descent and is a male. You have to acknowledge that that is the truth. And that if you put yourself in those shoes, how would you feel? Because as much as people talk about black power and all this brown power, blah, 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 you didn't choose to be this. You didn't choose what you were going to come into this world as. You just did. They didn't choose it either. And so there might be privileges and advantages. There might be some that they never have seen before. They might be worse off than you. And so attacking me just because of what I look like is the same thing we should be fighting against. And so I think that level of empathy needs to be had to understand how some people are feeling on the other side of this. And then those people that are upset need to realize exactly what Brie Larson is talking about, what Captain Marvel, the movie, is actually about, which I do think the marketing, just like any other marketing, pumps up the female empowerment just because it's selling right now. But you gotta understand it's just a movie and it's just her political understandings and that she wasn't calling for something radical. So that's my thoughts on it. Go to the comment section. Let me know what you think about white discrimination, Captain Marvel, Brie Larson's comments, all these different things. Share it around, get the conversation started. Thumbs up, subscribe, and until next episode.